All right. So this brings us to utilizing VR to evaluate team performance. I'd like to introduce to you guys Andrea Mower. So Andrea spent the last 5 years validating how extended reality technology impacts businesses. Case studies showing her efforts with XR for Business have been published by IEEE, ACM, and PwC. At her current employer, she's implementing XR solutions for training and education, productivity, marketing, and socializing. As well as we have Rajesh. Rajesh is founder and CEO of Siminsights. Rajesh is the founder and CEO, and they apply AI XR technologies to enable no-code authoring, publishing, and evaluation of immersive, intelligent, and interactive digital twins that support training, quality monitor, and knowledge capture. So I'll leave it to you guys to take it away.
Do you have the clicker?
Yes.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
All right. Good to see you all here. As he said, my name is Andrea, and I'm really excited to talk to you today about how we're using virtual reality-based escape rooms to help evaluate team performance. And I will talk a little bit about the business context and the research we're doing, what we built, and then Raj is going to talk about the platform that we built this on. So first, let me set kind of the business landscape we're working in here. Due to the pandemic, we have a lot more people working remotely, and they have a desire to continue to work remotely. We have employers who are totally okay with that and saying we'd like to enable more of our people to continue working remotely. And where that starts to affect us is when we are working with teams for our jobs. So I know I work on an agile team, and one of the agile principal ground rules is that the team is co-located and has the opportunity to work together on a daily basis and form team trust and cohesion. And so some of the problems that we face in this landscape are we're hearing people wonder, well, how do I build that team connection? At this conference this week, I actually in person met someone on my team who I'd never met in person before. So how do we get these relationships developed and help these teams be high-functioning and productive teams? So my attention was drawn to this study that was done by the MIT Human Dynamics Lab, and they were looking at what makes a high-functioning team. They did a series of experiments where they put badge sensors on individuals who were operating on teams, and they tracked the whole team through these individuals, through these badge sensors, with the teams being all in person. How did they interact with each other? How did they communicate? What type of pitch and energy level was in their voice? How did they move their hands? How close to each other did they stand while they were talking? And trying to use big data analysis to define what makes a high-functioning, high-performing team. And they said using the data collected from these badges, they were able to predict which teams were going to be the most creative, bring in the most revenue, have the most sales, just based on the way that they communicate and interact with each other. So I love this idea of using data to help us assess how our teams are doing, though they're remote, and using virtual reality to bring the team together to experience this. So as a proof of concept, my company had been using VR for a long time to hold collaborative sessions where we bring people together and have them communicate and interact in a virtual landscape. But we wanted to create a singular experience where we could have the team members trying to accomplish a task together and problem solve together. So we made a virtual reality-based escape room where we could see team members trying to solve problems, and we could look at how do they communicate with each other in the space and look for some of those behaviors that MIT pointed out as these are the difference maker behaviors. So the next thing I'm going to show you is a video clip of putting two people from my team who are not associated with development or design of the escape room. In fact, they've never done an escape room in real life, pre-pandemic either. So the whole concept was very new to them, although they had experience in VR before. So I'm going to show you just a couple minutes of their interactions in the space, trying to solve the puzzles. And look for the ways that they're communicating with each other. Because while we cared about the puzzles being solved, really we wanted to look at the team dynamics of how they communicate and interact.
The green room rules yet.
Let's go find it out. I'm a rule breaker.
It says don't touch the cargo latches. Is this a cargo latch? Oh!
No, I think it's I just had to grab the door.
I grabbed a little thingy on the inside.
Oh, okay.
The diamond?
Yeah, well, here, I'm
Wait,
gonna
these
put
are
this- I'm gonna put this
shapes.
back. Yeah, so it probably goes over there. Oh, man.
We probably take the
Push
shapes and put
launched.
them in here.
Don't touch the cage latch. Wait, how did you grab that?
Huh?
How did you grab the latch? Or that
Oh wait,
shape.
don't touch the cage latch. Oops. My bad. So then what do we do with this?
So just a little snippet of seeing those two interact together and with objects and scenes in the space without giving too much away in case you ever do the escape room experience we designed. The overall participant experience, each team member goes into a VR experience that first is just individual VR basics. So we want to make sure anybody who's going into this, what we call group mission training, which is what you just saw, the escape room, that they already know how to grab objects in VR, they know how to teleport, they can move around and therefore like contribute to the experience by solving some of the puzzles on their own. So everybody passes off first in this individual VR basics. And then they jump in with the rest of their team into a group mission training. And the goal in that space is to learn the rules that are in the environment. So we have certain things that are like off limits, they're no-nos, and we want them to discover all those in the space. And this is a great parallel for agile teaming because it's so important to share information as you're co-developing with a group of people, whether it's remote or together. You need to be operating at a frequent cadence of sharing discoveries with each other and be really open about the things that work and the things that don't work. What are the things we shouldn't do? What are the things that we should do? So this is a really nice simulation of can we detect that in the virtual world, that communication is happening? I don't know if you've ever been to a real life escape room and you go through it with a group and at the end you're like, I have no idea what happened after X point. Like somebody was in another corner solving something and I never heard like, how did we get that next clue? We wanted to set this up in a way that incentivizes the team, that they communicate with each other and every person at the end of the experience understands what was the procedure that we did to get through the experience. So the individual certification step that comes after group training really helps us say, this was a high-performing team. They are able, each one of them is able to solve the puzzles, perform the procedure, escape the room, not commit any fatal errors. And so that illustrates for us that this was successful, like they had effective communication because everybody knew how to do it. So in that way, we're validating MIT's list of high-performing team behaviors and saying, for us, it did yield high performance. Everybody escaped, and everybody could do it individually afterward. So some of those observable behaviors, and first, we're just recording what's happening. So we have somebody in there with a camera, recording, capturing it, and we're going back and like tagging the behaviors we saw around the amount of talking each individual does to kind of weigh, is there a good balance across the whole group, or do we see one person over-communicating and other people not contributing much? We also want everybody in the room to be getting hands-on with the equipment and making discoveries. We also want to see them sharing those discoveries with each teammate. So it's important to have like one-on-one communication channels as well as one-to-group communication channels. And the idea of like not leaving anybody behind where they didn't learn the rules is really important. Also, we wanted to observe where people stand when they are talking to somebody. How close do they get to teammates? Do they feel more comfortable close to some teammates? And do they tend to stay farther away in the virtual space to other teammates? Do they practice active listening? Ben and Hannah were really good examples of high-performing team members in the ways that they communicated with each other. So in the end, we really want to validate like MIT's results and leverage this channel of technology that has all these sensors inherent in it. That it's a great source for data collection that we can kind of constantly be monitoring how our teams are doing. So you could apply this outside of an escape room to collaborative meetings in the future and to other sessions and events, but as a training platform that's trying to help the team improve their collaborative behaviors. This is a good activity to point out some strong behaviors and some weaker behaviors. I'm going to turn it over now to Raj, who's going to talk about the platform that we built this experience on, and I'll let him wrap it up. Thanks, Raj.
Thank you, Andrea. So I'll talk about Hyperscale. This is the no-code authoring platform that we use to create this simulation that you just saw the video clip of. And I'll start with one key feature. Without that, it wouldn't be possible, and that is multiplayer. So as part of the no-code authoring platform, of course, we want to enable people to create the environment and lay out the scenario, but we also want to free them up from having to worry about how to synchronize player states, how to make sure they can all talk to each other, how to define rules for who is allowed to do what, how to collect data so that we are able to later on reconstruct who did what, when exactly, and also how to score their behaviors at both individual and team level. So Hyperscale does a lot of that heavy lifting and frees up the learning designer, instructional designer, just focus on the scenario. What is the goal of the objective, goal of the study? What is the objective? What's the research question, and so on. So here on the slide, you can see a menu on the left side that has various controls like different player speaker volumes and few other controls. And the right side, you see some screenshots. So that's the first capability I wanted to highlight is the multiplayer aspect. The second is analytics and reporting. So we have the capability to track, as I mentioned, every action. And then the author is also given some no-code ways to design a feedback screen that can be shown to one or all participants at the end of the session or right in the middle of it. And the purpose of this screen is to let the participants know how they did. So on the left side, you see a column which is showing kind of a timeline of checkpoints that they hit. So overall, how quickly did they finish the task, and then some detailed breakdown of that. On the right side, you see performance notes. So the author can also say, if the player does this action at this time, give them this feedback that that's not the right action, or so on. So the part of the no-code platform is to enable the author to be able to design this kind of general feedback that can be given during the simulation. The other part of reporting is something we provide in a web portal. And what you can do there is do aggregate analysis. So after all the study participants have gone through it, you can pull together all of their data. You can do visual analytics to explore and look for patterns, or you can define dashboards and publish the dashboards. So after talking about multiplayer and analytics, let me step back and tell you how our teams used Hyperscale to build this whole experience. So Andrea's team has 3D artists. They created these beautiful looking assets that you saw, and Hyperscale was able to ingest them and convert them into interactive virtual objects and put them in a repository that you see under the reuse column. After that, my team took some of the lesson designs that Andrea's team created, and then we authored the scenario accordingly, so that it became a simulation. It even included some voice commands that the players have to use at certain points to open boxes and things like that. After the experience is authored, then publishing it is just a click. After publishing, the experience becomes available for participants to use on Oculus Quest or even other devices like web and mobile. And when the experience takes place, then, as I mentioned, we collect all the data that can be analyzed. So the key to no-code content creation is how do we give a lot of ease of use to the users along with a lot of power. And so there are really three ways. If you look across all the no-code tools, there are three ways. So we have all three of those in Hyperscale, and you can see those three screenshots. So top left is a drag and drop graphical user interface. So the repository that I mentioned, which contains all the assets, is built right in. So you can drag and drop and lay out the scene, the different props, the characters, and so on. And then there are other UI areas, menus, where you can author what happens when. So at the bottom, you can see a node-based interface. So that interface is used for two things in Hyperscale. One is to author turn-by-turn dialogue between players and the non-player characters, as well as is used to define the interaction between the player and the objects in the environment. So if by clicking a box has to open, that can be defined using this no-code node-based interface. And recently, we started adding a third functionality, which is what you see in the top right, which is Blockly type block-based coding. So if you've heard of MIT Scratch or code.org, that kind of interface is really useful to help novices learn programming. Little kids are able to master it very quickly. So by providing all these three types of functionalities, we are really hoping to put a lot of power in the user's hands. And these are the functionalities that our team used to build this simulation. So now I'll look at what's next. So as we continue with this study, we want to test with more users to collect more data. The next thing we want to do is automate some of the detection of the high-performing team behaviors. For example, once you discover something, a rule, do you then tell other people or not? Or as Andrea mentioned, do you take turns? How much time do you spend talking versus listening? Those kinds of things. So it's possible to automate those so that in future, these scenarios can be created much more easily. Another important next step is how do you give feedback? So feedback is a huge part of learning, and there's a lot of literature on how to give feedback properly. So we want to explore the different ways of giving feedback in this area of team skills. Another goal we have is to do longitudinal studies. So have some people go through these simulations repeatedly and then look for trends in their growth in some area of team skill behavior. And last but not least, we want to integrate biometric sensing into our platform in future. So we can capture things like gaze, pupil diameter, heart rate variability, and so on. So we can enrich the data set with which to do the study in future. So in conclusion, we presented our work to this point on using VR to study team behaviors and help people learn better ways of working inside a team. And we are taking advantage of all these observational capabilities that VR provides today, which are far more than what the MIT team had access to in 2012 with the sociometric badges. They were very limited. And it's at a time when this kind of study we feel is very much needed as people try to adjust to this new reality. So thank you very much. We're happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you so much. All right, questions?
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. In terms of automating detection of behaviors regarding communication, have you thought about different metrics that you would use to evaluate the quality of the communication that they're amongst the team? So not just if they're saying anything to somebody, but exactly what they're saying.
Yeah, we have thought about it. So our roadmap is that first we want to follow the literature tree starting in 2012 with Sandy Pentland's group at MIT. They've done a lot of recent work too. So we are studying that, and we want to focus on automating those because those are already proven to assess properly and give constructive feedback. Some of that has been applied in MOOC settings, and is very promising results in terms of completion rates. So we want to first replicate those. And then we have thought about understanding the content also, so intent detection, but there are some challenges there too. So that's what I can share right now.
Even like keyword detection. So if somebody was, just figured out the puzzle with the number wheel, did they go find somebody else and start talking about the number wheel? Or, were they talking about something totally different? Good question.
All right, other questions?
Do you have a date or a thought when you might publish some of the findings that you're collecting from this?
Right, so we just finished building the escape room and put our first testers through was that last week, 2 weeks ago? So we have scheduled our other groups to go through. We have 30 people who are going to go through the experience in different, I think, groups of 3 to 4, 4 to 5. My team's giving me finger signals. And after that, we need some time to put the data together, make a plan about, releasing the findings. So we're probably looking at a couple months, like end of Q1 of next year.
And how would we find out how to get access to that?
So you can reach out to me or Raj on LinkedIn, and we can, we can let you know the findings that we find and talk about if you're interested in using it with your teams.
Amazing. Thank you guys so much. I think seeing these, I don't know if other people felt this way, but when you actually see through someone's eyes, I still feel like that's this empathetic moment that's often is overlooked. And I think it's cool that you're connecting both the empathy of the experience of like looking through someone's eyes, but with the data behind it to say like what's actually effective. So fascinating stuff. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
All right.